Three, two, one, and we're live. Joined today by Oliver Kanders of Zeotap. Welcome.
Thanks for inviting me.
No, thank you very much for agreeing to come in. So you've got some exciting news that you want to share with us a little bit later on in the podcast. But before we get into that, if you could just describe Zeotap as a business, what it does, what the key capabilities, functionalities of Zeotap are, that'd be really useful, I think.
Sure, absolutely. So we first started out in 2014, Berlin-based company. And basically the idea to found Zeotap came from our CEO, Daniel, who was working with the Vodafone executive board in Germany for 6 years. And basically what he realized back then was that Vodafone had an amazing data asset, right, that they weren't using apart from internally, and that it would be quite nice to make that available outside of the Vodafone organization, right, obviously in a safe manner. And Daniel then went on to work in the mobile advertising industry, quickly realized, oh my God, mobile is growing like crazy, but there is hardly any good data around here. So the programmatic market basically is to quite a degree dysfunctional at this moment. So what we set out to do is to become the first cross-operator, so telecom operator platform, data platform in the world. Today we have 9 large telecom operators across Europe and India live, and based on the trust that we've kind of gained with them as an organization, we were able to also win a lot of other large enterprises. So basically, we focus a lot in the beginning on absolute privacy compliance and data security. We have 8 certifications in the field, and that opened up a lot of doors. And another thing that came along with it was that basically we had to build a large engineering team. And now it turns out that that's super helpful because a lot of the value that's within good data, which is what Zeotap is about, or the best data, the best quality data, a lot of that value can only be unveiled or made available if you can treat large amounts of raw data instead of, let's say, pre-aggregated data sets, and you try to put them together and do something with them. So essentially, Zeotap is about making much better data available to the market, because back then we looked at the Nielsen DAR benchmarks, for instance, around socio-demo. With everyone talking about AI and data science, it's really quite surprising that right now in the programmatic ecosystem with most data providers, if you want to target males or females, you will have an on-target reach of 60%, which is not so much better than throwing a coin. And we just believe that that should be better. And it has to be better if we want to apply nice algorithms on top of the data, because if you feed the algorithm something valuable, then your results will, or the recommendations from the algorithm will be correct, right? On the other hand, if you don't have good base data, then we believe you can go home.
Garbage in and garbage out.
Exactly, yeah. I usually use the S word, but the G word is much better.
This is a PG podcast. So when did you, or when did Daniel found the business?
That was 2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really interesting, just in terms of that's a fairly recent development in the last half decade. And what stands out to me when I look at Zeotap is that you do have almost a completely different philosophy around the collection of data and the segmentation of data. And it is very much a focus on quality first, whereas maybe historically data exchanges had focused principally on scale and the overall size of the population in the universe. Your focus primarily seems to be on quality.
On both, actually. We think it has to be both, right? So I think that's exactly the problem that existed in the beginning of the market. Because when the programmatic market first came around, right? Now with programmatic, you can reach relevant individuals using data. The problem was that there were either companies that had very small, very good data sets, but couldn't provide scale, right? So, a large brand couldn't run a big campaign on that data. And there were companies that had large data sets, but they were usually modeled, right? So basically, I think that what was missing was a player with the confidence and the vision to say, you know what, we are only going to gather the best data out there, and we're going to aggregate it across data owners that are very difficult to catch, very difficult to convince, right? Because it's a new topic for them. For most companies out there, this is still a relatively new topic. And by doing that, we will have the best data, but over time, we will also be able to aggregate scale. And that took 4 years, but now we're kind of there.
Yeah, and it seems like you took your time to get to a position. I mean, clearly trying to deliver campaigns and drive revenue in the interim, but it does seem like you knew setting out that it was going to take a significant investment and in a significant period of time to develop those necessary partnerships and relationships and to create the asset that would ultimately be incredibly valuable to the ecosystem, which again, I think, marks a change in philosophy with respects to comparative solutions that tend to focus on immediate results and high volume, high transaction.
Absolutely agreed. I mean, if you look at most really successful companies in the world, they only start to take off after 5, 6, 7 years, right? We were never in that game where we wanted to say, okay, we want to be big, very big in terms of revenue as soon as we can, but we had other priorities, right? We were aware that it would take quite a while. We had to be very patient, and that wasn't easy, right? But now it's starting to pay off, especially with GDPR. I mean, we back then what we did was we saw GDPR coming. Mm-hmm. We wanted to be an ethical company anyway, right? And we built a hypothesis on what we thought GDPR would look like and what we believed that consumers would consider a good privacy approach to data, right? And we built everything around that. So that's one of the components that took a lot of time, but now it's paying off because GDPR has arrived in the way that we thought it would arrive, right? The law text is pretty similar to what we thought. And we didn't have to do much this year because we were 2.5 years prepared. Our contracts contained the right language. The only thing we had to do with all of our data partners is that they had to sign a 1-page addendum for a few specific sentences that, had changed the GDPR. Yeah.
It's pretty efficient, pretty effective.
Yeah, it was hard work in the beginning, but this year it just started feeling really, really good.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the different components and some of the different data sets that you have. And maybe if we begin with your approach to identity and identity resolution.
Yeah. Well, that's an entirely different topic than the common targeting attributes, right? So identity is something that first for us, we needed to build a technology in order to be able to use the telecom data in the first place, right? Because the telcos, we talked to them, they came to us and they said, well, we have email addresses and phone numbers, right? How are we going to allow the creation of targeting segments or anything else that's possible into the digital space? So we had to devise a solution in order to solve that. And that technology is by now patented. And we realized that the telco actually does have quite a unique position in the ecosystem because they are the ones that are sitting in the gateway of everyone's phone, right? And that allows you to make that connection in very simple terms without going deep into it. So what we have now is we have a deterministic mobile full device identity graph. That means that we can match phone numbers and email addresses, obviously hashed, right? Against the relevant ad ID and cookie. And that's a super strong place to start from because obviously it allows the data to be functional across the different digital channels, right? And it also allows us to help all of the brands out there who have been investing heavily into DMPs and kind of collecting their first-party data from different silos and have then realized, oh my God, that data is not usable across large parts of the digital ecosystem, to help them bring that data live, target on the basis of that data, model on the basis of that data, and to be better able to do attribution. Because now if you send out a mobile campaign, if we've onboarded your CRM data, right, you will be able to draw the connection. That ad ID has seen our campaign, and that ad ID belongs to the following group of hashed emails, right, that have just bought something on our website. So there is a clear connection between the digital marketing activities and the actual sales success.
Great. So outside of identity resolution, deterministic onboarding of CRM, you also provide targetable data segmentation, socio-demographic interest segmentation. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So the identity bit is the one that came second, right? Because here we waited until we had really significant scale to get started. Because if we do CRM onboarding, we have a match rate of 5%. The project is just too complex, right, to undergo it for not enough value, right? So we've waited until we now have match rates of at least 20, if not 30, 40, 50% in order to get that started across the EU and India and the US, by the way. The targeting segments were what we started with. First off, we had only telco data, right? What we do with the telcos is we move in phases. So in order to get them on board in the first place, it was important to not be like, okay, give us all the data that you have and that you have access to, because the telco can literally see everything that's happening on the phone, right? And secondly, obviously, it needed to be privacy compliant. So what we said is, we will go with the CRM data of you guys and not with a much larger set of deep stream data, which is basically which mobile websites are being loaded, which apps are being used, and so on. Because that second data, you don't have an opt-in for that, right? And that first data, the CRM data, that is absolutely okay. Most of the telcos, for a significant part of their subscriber base, have collected an opt-in, and it can already provide a lot of value to the ecosystem. What kind of data are we talking about? So the special thing around telcos, specifically here in Europe, is that when you sign up for the contract, you have to show your ID card, right? So they have ID verified, age, gender, nationality, language, registered zip code, right? Solves a super big problem in the market, although it's quite simple attributes that are also not considered very sensitive by consumers, right? And then the second set of data in the CRM is basically contract or usage specific info, like who is an international roamer, right? Is it a business or private contract? What do you belong to? Which group of spenders? Are you spending $50 a month on your contract, or $100 or $150? Pretty good indicator for income. So that's the kind of data we started with.
There was something quite interesting that you spoke about, the difference between European telco contracts, personal contracts, and the US style contracts that are typically built with telecommunications companies. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we focused from the very beginning on the US telcos. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's by far the biggest market. Those guys have been looking at the topic for quite a long time and have been looking to kind of find the right partners to do it with or build it themselves. And telcos usually struggle with that because it's a very complex market, right? And it's not their core business. And we eventually got test data from two of the main telcos in the US, and we tested their socio-demographic data. And we realized that there was a very fundamental challenge there because the US has a lot of family contracts or family plans. That means that in quite a lot of cases, 6 contracts are running under one name, one age, one gender, so that the socio-demo data in Europe, if you source it from a telco, is of a much higher quality than the one in the US, which basically led us to expanding our data partnerships to further enterprise partners in order to also have socio-demo data in the US at the kind of quality we have here in Europe. And secondly, to also complement our European data, right? Because yes, in a lot of markets here, we already have 2 of the main telcos live, and they can cover 40 to 60% of the smartphone population, which is super good. But obviously, any data buyer wants to ideally be able to have 100% of the smartphone population to choose from. And that was a decision we could also only take last year, because before that, the vision of becoming the first cross-operator data platform in the world was big enough for us. Yeah, and then last year we had this eureka moment where we said, you know what, this is happening. A lot of telcos are following because now, quite a few telcos are on board. The word is spreading, right? We are ready to also expand our data partnerships because after all, it's about the quality and the scale of the data and not primarily about the source, right? So yeah, was a big step for us. And since then, we've added a lot more data. Happy to dive into that.
Yeah, so let's talk about the recent development in the business, a new partnership that you've just built.
In the UK.
In the UK.
Okay, good. Yeah, so 3 Hutchinson just yesterday went live with us. They are our first exclusive telecom operator partner here in the UK. We are super happy about the partnership. Obviously, those guys have moved very quickly within the framework that we always have, right? There are very long GDPR audits on the data. There are long technical implementations to get the identity bit to function, right? And they have 10 million subscribers here in the UK, which means there's a potential for 10 million ID verified socio-demo profiles. And the reason why we've only launched this year in the UK, in Germany, and France, before that we were live, our first markets were Spain, Italy, and India. So this year the entire game changed, right? Because we went live in UK, Germany, and France, and last year in the US. Because the telcos here and in Germany and France, they wanted to wait for the final GDPR text before doing anything with us. But we decided that we would do this together already 18 months back. So we had a lot of time to prepare. And in the meantime, we've also won other exclusive data partners, so that already now, with the opted-in users of 3 Hutchinson, we can run pretty large campaigns.
So obviously, a lot of what I do is observing the opportunities and the options within the market around data, availability, specialization, and I form partnerships with businesses to support our clients. Talk me through the process of initially beginning to scope out a partnership with a telco like 3 Hutchinson, develop that partnership, and then what's next? How do you integrate that? How do you operationalize it? What's the plan moving forwards with such a large and significant partner?
Yeah. So I think it's about kind of already planning out everything and laying out all the puzzle pieces from the very beginning, right? So right now, the partnership we have with them, the plans are pretty clear. We know exactly what we're going to do, right? And basically the way that it goes is that usually, we talk to someone in a commercial or strategy department at the telco, right? Then they get super excited, right? And the problem is that they have gotten super excited about things with other partners already 30 times. And then their legal teams, after half year of excitement, have told them, no, this is not possible, right? So we take a very different approach to that. I would say that usually the moment we've had a very good conversation and we've got some, proper interest from a telco's commercial team, the first thing we go is, okay, I'll stop you right there. We will now, at this point in time, we will already go to your privacy folks. We will already go to your legal team. And we will probably now spend 3 months discussing with them everything that we're doing. But it will be a fundamental difference to other projects that we will have undertaken, because after those 3 months, they will tell you this is all good to go. Get creative, right? Which is super important for any large company like a telco, because obviously they are a very big ship, right? And no matter how creative or innovative a specific unit is, they have to work within that large framework, right? So getting them the permission early to do this with us sets free a lot of, positive entrepreneurial energy. And that's one of the things that enabled us to win 9 telcos up to today.
And then how do you deploy those partnerships once they're put in place?
Yeah, good question. So there is quite a bit of a technological piece to it, obviously. So first off, we make sure that the telco has the data prepared in the way that we can ingest it, right? We are also quite flexible around that, because out of 90 people at Zeotap, 60 are in engineering, data science, and data security. So we can adapt to the telcos, which is super helpful and saves us time. And then the second piece is that we actually install an own patented technology within the telco technological environment. And that is the identity bit. We call it the Zeotap mapper, So that allows us, together with publisher partnerships, to map the phone number to the ad ID and the cookie, right? And the magic here, and one of the reasons why it's privacy compliant, is that the moment we've installed it, the ownership of that technology is transferred to the telco. Because that technology has to look up the phone number of a smartphone in the gateway, right? And the telco is allowed to do that by contract, right? Obviously, I mean, if you're loading a mobile web page and you're not on Wi-Fi, then the telco is kind of the fulfillment provider of that, right? And that's a part of it. And then basically the data gets matched to the CRM data, right? And then our technology, or by then the telco's technology, does two things. The identity data that we're receiving in a hashed format is sent into our ID store, and the targeting attributes or attributes of those user groups, right, are sent into our attribute store. So this is a data security feature, which is super safe, that we've devised, which means that we have a separate ID store and attribute store. And the only connector between the two is a so-called Zeo ID that is sitting in the middle of those two stores, which is hashed, which is rotating, so that hash changes all over again, and which will soon be managed by a third party. So that if someone wanted to hack our data systems, and we have over 20 monitoring and security tools around them, and 2 very large certifications, ISO certified, right? A few very large companies I know haven't been able to receive that certification. So if someone would try to hack our technology, they would have to hack both of these different stores and a third party plus a hash within milliseconds, and then it still wouldn't work, because the moment there is an anomaly, the system shuts down. And we've actually done, back then when we were still talking to the US telcos, we've done a 3-month hacking project. So our best engineers, they were hacking our technology, right? And then also the team of that telco was hacking our technology at the same time, right? We both had task force on it for 3 months, and there was a white hat hacking firm sitting in the middle as a referee, right? Judging if everything is going on well, right? And also kind of evaluating as to how far our technology could be hacked, with the result that it's not possible. So yeah, it's a very good case study we show to every telco, because we've actually attempted it in practice to hack our technology together with that telco's team, and they were pretty good guys, and it didn't work.
Yeah, again, I think that just goes back to what I was talking about earlier, and that you seem to have invested in those types of projects far earlier in your own development. And as you say, I know many businesses that either don't have the necessary certification or don't regularly attempt penetration testing or anything like that. So again, a testament to, I think, the philosophy surrounding Zeotap and the way in which you focus on security, compliance, privacy, etc. So you're a very, very busy man. You're traveling a lot. You've been traveling a lot over the past few years. Talk to me a little bit about the development of the team and the implementation of country managers.
Sure. I mean, here we have a similar approach, right? Because if you want to do things differently, you also need a different kind of culture, right? That was something that was very clear to us from the very beginning. We had a very small nucleus team that was working really well together. Otherwise, we couldn't even have started this off, because it's very complex, right? So our early investors, they started telling us when we were 10 people, they were like, you guys might be a startup, but you certainly don't feel like a startup in the sense of professionalism, right? Obviously, we had to move very quickly in order to get all the things done that we've done until today, right? And then when we opened our first markets, Italy, Spain, and India, we were facing the question, okay, how do we do this now? Are we just going to go with the first people that we're meeting that we think could make this work, right? Or do we take a different approach? And our answer to that question was very clear. I mean, this is such a trust-based business, and it necessitates people that go into the very nitty-gritty details, right? We said we want every one of our country managers to understand GDPR. We want them to understand what it means technologically, right? We want them to be able to consult clients, because everyone in the market right now, especially the junior people, right, sitting within the buying units, right, they don't have a lot of experience within that market. They need someone to help them navigate it, right? And if we can't do that, we are not a good partner, right? We need to be able to help them understand it. So what we said is, no, we're going to take our time. Even if it hurts, we're rather going to wait 6 months longer until we found the right country manager, right, than getting someone on board instantly to be able to get started, right? And then we want to empower that person to recruit their own team, obviously with our help, right? We have a recruiting, we are recruiting less than 1% of candidates that are applying to Zeotap. So we're being very, very selective, and we're taking our time, because that core nucleus of the team decides who will be the next one to join, right? And the moment that we started scaling this had to work, right? We needed to be able to trust them. Yeah.
So what markets are you available in today? What's the scalability of the solution?
Yeah. So the good thing is, our data offering is quite homogeneous across markets, and in each of our markets we have very, very good scale, which usually means more or less either the majority of smartphone devices in that market or even more than that, right? Those markets are the top 5 EU, the US and Canada, and India. Plus, we have recently added Latin America, simply because our DNA is mobile first. And you can imagine, in India, people use their smartphone 24 times more than their desktop computers and 7 times more than the TV, right? And that's what we're looking at in the other more developed markets as well, right? It's just because there is such an installed base of TVs and desktops that the budget is sticky, right? Mm-hmm. The usage of these devices is still sticky to a stronger degree than, for instance, in Latin America and India. But these are super big markets for us. And now what we're doing until end of year is we have just put live further European markets, right? Because obviously the moment one of our clients understands that this solution works in one market, whatever part of our data they're using, right, they are by now looking for partners that allow them to scale that globally, right, at the same standard. And that's exactly what we want to provide, because everyone is sick of having to kind of piece together, different providers across different markets in order to get one simple thing done, like great socio-demographic targeting. We can get that done across all of those markets. Yeah.
And how are brands and agencies engaging with you today? Is it mostly through the trading teams and programmatic departments? Is it direct? What's the nature of the relationship?
Yeah. So, our primary partners are the agencies, right? They have the mandate from the brand that they are the experts that are choosing the right data providers in this space, or data technologies if we talk about identity, right? And we respect that, and we respect the agencies for that. And they have, usually they have a huge advantage in knowledge, right? In an overview of the market and all of the different players to be able to make that call, right? So that's our priority. As for who are we talking to within agencies, right? I think it needs kind of what we usually do is a full kind of round of people that are relevant to that equation, right? Obviously, the senior decision makers need to say, okay, everyone here, this is a relevant data provider, right? Or this is a relevant new partner, take a look at it, right? And then we get good traction and we have the permission to talk to everyone that's relevant, right? And then apart from the leaders and the trading teams, right, the planners have to understand it, right? Because they have to say, my brand wants to do the following in the next months, right? Zeotap, I think, can solve that. So they need to understand it. And then they put it into the brand's plan, right? And then they give that plan to the trader. Now, if the trader says, I've never heard of these guys, how can I activate them in the first place? That's not very good, right? That's not very efficient. So we also talk to the trading teams, and obviously those conversations are slightly different, right? For the planner, it's relevant, okay, which kind of audiences, right? What kind of value can we provide? How are the KPIs impacted on target percentage, conversions, engagement? What is it like in your specific case, in your industry vertical, right? Or with this kind of creative? We have to be experts around all of that. For the trader, the question then is, well, more or less the same, right? We cover that with them too. They need to know what the results are that our data can deliver. But it's also much more technical. Where can our data be activated? How long does it work? If we create a custom segment, how long does it take to push that, right? So yeah, that's the kind of topics that we have to dive into.
And for a relatively new data exchange in the ecosystem launching 2014, even in 2014, that was a fairly saturated environment, probably at over 50 different data exchanges available, Load2Me, Oracle, IOTA. I mean, just a plethora of potential opportunities for a trader. How does a business like Zeotap enter into that market, disrupt that market, and be successful?
Very strict methodology. That is one of the components. So from the very beginning, we said, whatever kind of data we are taking onto our platform, right, has to be significantly better than what's currently out there. That is our only chance to be successful. And to be honest, if we're not able to do that, we shouldn't be building this company, right? So that was the nucleus of it all, right? And it went along with our very much ethical approach and, acquiring so many certifications around GDPR, which now means that while others have lost a lot of data, right, we have kept growing through GDPR. We haven't lost a single data partner, right? Because we had done that work before, right? We didn't need to chicken out in April because in May there would be big news or big risks to the company, right? So I can sit here and I can be calm, right? And I can focus on building the business. That is the first important part. And the second one is this market is about relationships. This is such a complex environment, right? And each and every one of us, no matter in which company, is collecting experience, right? And is collecting experience that is potentially valuable to solve some of the problems in that market, right? So it's very much about collaboration for us, right? We could go and we could say, we only apply our identity graph to whatever someone is doing with us explicitly. Or we could say, our targeting data can only be used on specific sets of inventory. And that's not what we want. We want to work with the whole market, demand side, supply side, even our competitors, right? In order to make the market better. Because we are excited about all of the things that are today already being talked about a lot. AI or connected car location data, connected TV data, right? All of these things are super interesting. But if we can't solve these basic fundamentals, right, we're never going to get there. And I think all of us in the industry, there's a lot of super motivated and naturally curious people out there who want to who just love the space and love the people in it, right? And we want to enable as many people as possible, empower them to do more exciting things, right? While remaining within law and while remaining within a fair value exchange with the consumer.
So the philosophy in part is that if you help to grow the market, help to grow the size of the pie, then everybody gets a larger share of pie, including Zeotap.
Yeah, you have to be a facilitator in this market. Everyone is struggling, right? Everyone is struggling in some topics, right? If you can help them get better, you're building a good partnership, right? I think in today's world, in the world of technology, the days of ripping someone off are over. And not that we have ever thought about that, right? But and I'm an educated systemic coach, right? The only sustainable relationship is one where, on a long-term basis, both parties profit, right? And the logic around that for a data platform like us is pretty simple, right? It's just simply super inefficient if everybody now goes out and makes 100 single data connections, because all of that has to be managed. It's a lot of technological complexity behind that to be able to process that data in your system in the first place. And we're not talking about activating it or gathering all the insights, right? So there's a lot of sense in having an intermediator who does that for some of the players in the market, right? And one way we do that, for instance, is around socio-demo. So what a lot of clients told us is, oh my God, the last 2 years we tested 100 partners with socio-demo data, right? In order to find 2 that actually work. Not every player should have to go through that process, like, because then it's 100 players having to go through that process, right? So we said, let's do it for them. We have the engineering team to do it, and we build an automated auditing technology, which is connected with Comscore, Nielsen, and Facebook, and our ID verified large data set. So we can test any data set against those panels and our own ID verified data set, and we can give it a score, and we can make sure that only data that scores above a certain target threshold, right, enters our systems in the first place, because we don't want bad data in there. So right now our acceptance rate of data partners is 11%. 90% are for socio-demographic data in that case. 90% we don't allow on our platform because their data, no matter what they've told us before, how they collect the data and so on, right, doesn't meet our quality standards.
And there's a process, I remember you telling me, where providers have to send a sample file, you'll review and audit the sample file, then they'll send a larger file, you'll review and sample that larger file, and at each step in the process there are checks and balances to ensure that quality is always of the highest standard.
Exactly.
So talking about some of the data sets that are coming down the line and looking at interest segmentation and app usage segmentation, because I think it speaks to that continued focus on quality assurance, and also on what you hinted at earlier, which is, you only want to be able to provide the best possible data within any given category. Can you talk a little bit about the way you've been approaching developing interest-based segmentation, app usage-based segmentation, and when you think that's going to be available on the market?
Sure. It is already available.
Perfect.
And we built that since mid last year, and we have over the majority of smartphone users in the UK, for instance, and that applies to all other markets around that proposition. And the way that we went about it was that basically our client said, so roughly 50 of the top 100 brands in the world work with us by now. Not all of them in global partnerships, because the first data that went live from our systems was 2016. So founded 2014 and live in the market since 2016, right? And first in Spain, Italy, and India, and now also in the US and Canada, and in UK, Germany, and France. So a lot of those partners have told us, guys, you've really solved the problem here for us in socio-demo data. Thank you very much. Can you also do that in interest data? And then we said, well, let's take a look at it, right? And then we asked them, well, what are your main problems around interest data? And it wasn't all that surprising because unanimously, basically everyone in the market says interest data is usually not very transparent, right? I have a briefing, I'm asking a data provider for a segment, they tell me, oh, I got exactly that segment, right? And then I ask them, how do you exactly create that segment? Like, how's the data sourced, right? And then it gets very complicated, right? And then either the segment performs on the campaign or it doesn't. In any case, it's very hard to understand why it performed or why it didn't perform, right? And it's a lot of trying out and not very reliable. The second thing they told us is that usually interest segments are not very customizable, right? If they have very specific asks as to how the segment should be created, there is hardly anyone who can do that, right? And then thirdly, a lot of the data is old, they told us. And that's all very logical because, like I've said, the moment programmatic came around, there was hardly any data out there. So a lot of companies went and said, okay, let's pragmatically solve that problem. We have some data here. We'll create some partnerships with a few other companies, right? And then we have all of that data together in a system and somehow we'll figure it out, right? But the essential problem with that lies in the DNA, which is if you source pre-aggregated data, right? So one of the data partners you have has one methodology and taxonomy around segments. Another one has yet a different taxonomy, right? And you don't have the engineering team to process and segment raw data, then obviously you cannot create customized segments. And you're also very restricted in making the segments transparent because, if you haven't asked everyone exactly how that segment is created and you don't have own control over the raw data, then you can't be. Right? And that is the case for most historically grown data providers that were founded in the early days of programmatic, right? And we have a very different approach to it. So getting to the point now. What we did around interest data is we said we want to do raw app interest. Why? Because, I mean, it's a fact that people use their smartphone more than their TV and their laptops and desktops combined, right? So the time is on the smartphone. That's where we spend our time. And apps can, well, they say a lot about you, right? And you don't even have to know what's happening inside the app. That's not the data we're using, right? You just have to know which apps someone has installed and is using, right? Mm-hmm. And then we said, well, where are we getting that data from? And our conclusion was we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to become the 11th large SDK in the world, take 5 years to develop an analytics offering and win over all of the apps that already have SDKs and get rid of them, right? But we said we will work with the existing ones, but again, under a very strict methodology. And we can allow ourselves to be transparent around data segment creation, and we can allow ourselves to customize because we will aggregate all of them together. And then we have so much scale, we can give you the 4 million fitness and health app users, right? A number which a single app SDK just cannot provide because it's 1 out of 10, right? So what we've done is we have closed explicitly raw data contracts with around 5 of the top 10 app SDKs in the world right now, and they have to send us daily updates. So the data is fresh. And from all of these partners in any given day, we're getting per ad ID which apps have been used by that smartphone yesterday. And all of these different partners see different apps because the apps use different analytics providers, right? Now we added one more component, which again is around lighthouse data partners, right? Like the telcos that usually don't make their data accessible in the market yet. So we said there is one restriction with those app SDKs. The great thing about them is for thousands of apps, they can report the full user population, full device user population to us. But a lot of the branded apps, right, like the McDonald's app or the British Airways app, they don't use the free version of that SDK. They are not collecting opt-ins on the basis of the SDK so that data can be used for targeting. So what we did was we closed additional to that partnerships with security apps and utility apps. So I cannot name it in this podcast, right? But a very, very large software security app, right, has an opt-in from quite a good amount of their users that they are allowed to report, right, obviously as aggregated segments, right, which users have across all of the apps used on a smartphone, which apps have been used by the smartphone, right, including the top branded apps, right, because they're getting a device level opt-in, right. So now in every market we see over 10,000 app user groups, right, across covering the whole of the app ecosystem, right, travel apps, hotel loyalty, like Hilton Honors app and so on, Spotify, Shazam, you name them, right. And we create, by default, custom segments when we receive a briefing. We've tested the custom segments against standards. When the segment gets adapted really to the briefing, it performs significantly better. That's something we can say, right? It's a very new proposition on the market. A lot of players have told us that this is entirely unique in Europe, especially given that you can apply it in any platform. And we might want to talk about which platforms we're integrated with. We're very happy about that product.
But yeah, as soon as you bring it up, perfect segue. So what platforms are you integrated with?
So, I mean, definitely the main platforms are on the demand side. All the common big DSPs we have a direct integration with. DBM, the Trade Desk, Adform, AppNexus, right? Mobile-specific players like Tapmo as well, right? Or Whitespace. And now something interesting happened. So all the DMPs got interested in what we have to offer because a lot of brands direct have kind of heard about us from their agencies, right? And the agencies have told them, hey, this data is really working. And by the way, that's Zeotap data. So we are also integrated with, Adform has a DMP anyway, right? And then AppNexus has a DMP and we're integrated with that. But specifically, we're also integrated with Adobe, for instance, right? We have a first-party data integration with Google as well, so we can also push segments to someone's first-party seat, which is a great capability in some cases. And there's a lot of other, or let's say the major other DMPs are also we're in kind of final conversations for technical implementations, and I can't announce them. But yeah, all of those major players. Now, one thing that's particular around Zeotap, and we needed a bit of chance for that to happen or to evolve in the beginning, because in order to map the telco data, so to find the cookies and ad IDs, right, from the very beginning we had to forge publisher partnerships, because they're firing a pixel, right, or they have our SDK implemented, and that pixel just extracts the ad ID or cookie, and then in the telco gateway we can make the match, right? We don't collect any other data from the publisher partners that we work with. Again, very just trustworthy partnership, right? We're not scraping anything, and we guarantee that to them. Now, because of that, we started working with the publishers, and we had to offer them some kind of value exchange for helping us with the telco data mapping. So what we said is, well, we have all of this deterministic data here, and you guys are paying a lot for kind of insight solutions every year, so that someone tells you how many men and women are on your website and on specific websites, what age groups they are in, right? And also possibly what interests they have. You know what? We will build you a free insights UI based on millions and millions and millions of deterministic data sets, right? And you don't have to pay for it at all. And maybe once you take a look at it, you will get interested also in leveraging our targeting data, which a few years back was not so typical for a publisher, right? Because I think the agencies were very excited about driving all of this themselves in the programmatic teams, right? By now, there are different ways to activate data programmatically, right? PMPs have seen a rise also within GDPR, right? And also within IOs, publishers are now not only using their own first-party data, but mixing that with third-party data. And it took them some time to also kind of catch up with that, because they were building their own data assets, and only then they were fully able to focus on, okay, which third-party data partners do we need to complement our own data? Where are we missing bits and pieces? Where might we not be in the perfect position to collect very high-quality data, right? Or things like that. So now in our more established markets, we're already making 30-40% of revenue with publishers. And then the next logical step was obviously to say, okay, this is really working, and the market is becoming more balanced. Some activations on the demand side, some activations on the supply side. Let's talk to, Teats, SmartClip, Videology, all of these big video players, right? Because they need very high quality socio-demo data. And it has the highest lever on effective data CPM. Because if you pay $1 for data on $3 display campaign, right? Yes, there is a savings effect, an efficiency effect. If you pay that dollar on a $10 video CPM, that effect is huge, right? I mean, I'll give you a specific example. So in the market, the benchmark for gender is 60%, right? So you run a video campaign, $10 CPM. $4 of those $10 for every 1,000 users are wasted, right? Now, if we can give you 95%, only 50 cents are wasted, right? So you have an immediate savings effect of $3.50 on every CPM by applying our data. You might pay a little bit more for our data, right? But the savings effect and the efficiency effect is much higher. Plus, what we see with the telecom data across a lot of cases is there is a real verified user behind that data, a real person that has registered with their ID card at the telco. That cuts out part of the bot traffic, right? And we have seen higher viewability across those users, higher conversion rates, and that's on socio-demographic targeting. So that's not on a purchase intent segment, right? So there are a lot of reasons to go with that kind of ID verified data, which is also GDPR compliant.
I could listen to you talk about this all day long, but we do have to wrap up in a few minutes. So before we do, is there anything upcoming for Zeotap? Any events, conferences?
Yeah, there will be a lot more keynotes. To be honest, right now we are 90 people, right? We have 60 people in engineering because we care about doing it right. So it's basically right now 30 people building this company around the world in a commercial way. So, in sales and business development, and the other overhead functions, right? There will be a lot of events, right? We are hosting our own kind of guerrilla events, right? We like that. Very unusual events, right? I usually like to give very funny keynotes as well. Dress up as Luke Skydata and get the conference host to dress up as Darth Vader and fight out the eternal battle between innovation and adopting it quickly and just looking at it for 10 years and then doing something, or dressing up as Jack Sparrow, right? Now this year in Italy in front of 1,500 people, because I said, well, everyone thinks that everyone in this market is a pirate, and I will prove you wrong. So I entered stage as a pirate and I acted drunk, right? And after every single chapter of explaining what we're doing, I took off part of my pirate costume, and at the very end I was Mr. Clean. Because I had a white pants on it. I even took off my pants and I had white pants underneath. It was a shocking moment for the Italian market. But yeah, we like to be fun, right? And everything we do is fun in events and all of the other things we do with our partners, because we deserve it. I mean, we work so hard, right? And every one of our partners, we check if they do everything right in an ethical manner. And the moment that that's clear, we should have some fun along the way.
100%. Yeah. Well, congratulations on the 3 Hutchinson partnership. It's a pleasure to have you in. Zeotap, doing things differently.
It's great that you're doing this. I think this is what's very much needed in the market.
Thank you very much.